You're listening to Improve.
At that moment, my entire life kind of crashed down around me. It was possibly the quickest sudden change that had ever happened to me in my life.
When Claire Black's marriage ended very suddenly in 2008, it felt like the end of the world. Shocked and betrayed, she felt afraid, overwhelmed and confused.
Picture the scene watching Holby City with my husband. We've just eaten some dinner. And I thought he was a bit quiet. So I asked him what the matter was and if there was something wrong. And he said, yes, I've been seeing someone else. And within 2 hours, he had gone. And I was facing a different kind of life to what I had thought.
One apparently normal Saturday evening that ended up being a huge change for Claire and her young children. But had there been signs that the marriage was at risk?
No. None at all. I guess looking back, I can probably see some things that I possibly should have noticed or could have noticed. But at the time, no, this was a classic bolt from the blue. Absolutely no idea whatsoever.
Claire struggled to find clear guidance on how best to move forward. She knew that she didn't want her divorce to define her, and she wanted to do more than just survive. She wanted to take back her power, redefine who she was, and create a life in which she and her young children could flourish.
They were 3 and 1 at the time. So life was quite frantic, quite busy. I'd gone back to work 6 months earlier.
So, the devastating blow has been dealt. Claire's husband has left the family home, leaving her to deal with a whole range of emotions.
The grief cycle, if you like, that takes you through kind of shock and denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, eventually to acceptance. The first maybe 2 or 3 months were almost entirely, for me, filled with shock and denial. You know, I'd wake up every morning and think, oh, his car will be on the drive today. And it never was. So yes, you go through these phases, and it's not a linear journey. It's very swirling. So I found that my emotions could be very up and down, much like a roller coaster. You know, one minute I could be feeling okay. The next minute something might happen, or even nothing could happen. And I would burst into tears or be terribly upset, or suddenly feel that I couldn't cope anymore. So it really was a roller coaster of emotions. And I decided very early on that I was going to let myself feel all those emotions and kind of wallow in them. And I gave myself a deadline. So I said I would do that for 3 months. What was interesting was that by the time 3 months was over, I actually found that I was beginning to feel better. I'd kind of trained my brain to expect to feel better after 3 months. And I started to notice the upsides, the things that were actually better about my life now. I could organise a babysitter and go out without having to check with anybody. I could cook with ginger. My ex-husband hates ginger.
These days, Claire is a divorce coach, and her book, Break Up, From Crisis to Confidence, was the book she wishes had been available at the time of her divorce, because it helps to change the thought process of those who are recently separated or divorced.
It's very easy to go into a very negative spiral of questions within your own mind and get into a very negative way of talking to yourself. You know, I must have been a terrible wife for this to have happened to me. Why do I deserve this? Why is this happening to me? All of those questions have very negative answers. They don't go anywhere good. I always say to people, your mind is a bit like Google. So whatever question you ask your mind will try and answer it. So if you're saying to your mind, what did I do to deserve this? It's going to come up with a whole load of reasons why you deserve this. So I help people to come up with better questions to ask themselves. What can I do today that would help me feel just a little bit better? Or who could I go to for support around this? Who could help me? What is the tiny, weeny little thing that I can feel better about right now? And when you can replace those negative questions with these more positive questions, it can really help to shift your mindset. It's really important to label those emotions that you're feeling, acknowledge them and accept that they are there. And I often run through this kind of this technique where if you imagine that you're on a surfboard and you're paddling out to sea and you can see this wave of emotion coming towards you, turn your board, ride that wave into the beach and just notice when the emotion peaks and then starts to die away again. And once it's died away again, just imagine yourself sat on the beach, calm, with the sun on your back, and breathe deeply. And the more that you face those emotions, the more you will find that you're in control of them and that you can move through them in that way.
The strategies that Claire uses encompass both her personal experience of divorce with her training as an NLP master practitioner. NLP helps us to link words, thoughts and behaviour to specific outcomes, and it's very powerful.
It is very powerful, and that's the big focus of my coaching and also of my book is to help people move through that process, to help them to take their focus off what their ex is doing and onto themselves, to help them to get clarity around the things that perhaps are a bit scary or frightening, to begin to see options and choices, to take back conscious control of their feelings and their lives, and to focus on taking little steps that will help them to move forward. And my goal with everybody is to help them to feel proud and to feel dignified about how they've behaved through the process.
When children are included in the mix, it creates an extra element to divorce.
Very much in the early days, the children were my reason to get up in the morning. They needed to be fed. They needed to be taken to nursery or whatever it was. And yes, they were very much a focus. But you need to put that focus on you as well. That old analogy about putting your own oxygen mask on first, that really holds true through the process of divorce. If you can look after yourself, then you'll be much more capable of looking after those people who are dependent on you.
But despite that important self-care, Claire says how you deal with your children's perception of what's happening is a big deal.
Your children will follow your lead. So if you dwell on the negative, they will do the same. If you show them how to handle a curveball that life might throw you, and you show them that, okay, you may be distressed for a while, but eventually you pick yourself back up and you create something new, they will learn massively valuable life lessons from that. Personally, I never told them that it was his fault, and we sat down together to tell them what was happening. The important thing when they were that little was to make sure that they knew that we were both there, that we knew that we both loved them, and that we would be both spending time with them. And that's always been really important to me. I firmly believe that children are, they're 50% mine, they're 50% yours, but they don't belong to either of us. And I always wanted my children to be able to have a really good relationship with their dad. They ask more questions as they get older, and now I answer them in an honest way, but without criticising their dad. We all make mistakes, don't we?
So, to Claire's book, Break Up from Crisis to Confidence.
It's available on Amazon in Kindle format and also in paperback. And it's also available on my website as well. So you can order it directly from me there too. It takes you through a journey. So it starts with understanding the whole grief process and then looks at how you build your support network and how you can survive the early days. And it goes right then through, dialing down the temperature on your emotions and taking back control and things like that, reframing how you look at things, right the way through to looking at what you value and what you want to build your life around. So it's very much designed so that you can dip in and out to the relevant points that are important to you right now. So somebody who's in the very early days might start with surviving the early days and only use that chapter for a little while. And it's packed full of techniques and strategies and exercises to try. And I encourage everybody to buy a journal to use with the book so that they can kind of keep a journal as they go through and perhaps answer some of the questions and exercises in that journal. And that then becomes a kind of record of your journey, and really interesting to look back after a year or so and just see how far you've come.
You can find out more about Claire at claireblackcoaching.com.
Improve Personal Development Radio.